The military has released new figures about the number of active duty personnel who are going AWOL and deserting the force instead of going to Iraq. In the last 7 years, nearly 22,500 of them have gone AWOL or deserted. The numbers every year seem to rise. So we wanted to know what makes a soldier decide to run. And in the KXLY4 Focus, we found a young soldier, Ryan Johnson, and his wife Jennifer, hiding out in Nelson, British Columbia. They see themselves as resistors. Others see them as cowards who went AWOL in Canada.
I am a United States Army deserter. I did desert the military, but I deserted it with good reason in my mind.
Ryan Johnson's run from the law ends here in Nelson, BC. It begins hundreds of miles away in the farm country of Central California. He was a high school dropout who couldn't get steady work.
And one day while I was looking for a job on the internet, I saw an ad for the United States Army. And, they said they had money for college and health care, all this stuff that I wanted. And it was a steady job.
And an opportunity for Johnson to get his life started on the right track. Johnson says it was in that moment, in that recruiting office in Visalia, California, that his dream of serving his country turned into a nightmare. Johnson wanted to write his own ticket. He wanted to put conditions on his service to America.
Well, I told them that I wanted to serve my country, but I didn't want to do it from the front lines. I knew that there's lots of jobs in the military that have to be support.
And there are, but a soldier's first job is a soldier. Johnson thought he made a deal with a recruiter to avoid that.
They said that, yeah, no problem, I could join the military, I could get a non-combat job, and I wouldn't have to serve in Iraq.
In November 2003, during basic training at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, the reality was sinking in that Johnson didn't control his future.
Our drill sergeants told us that everything that our recruiters told us was complete and that's the words that our drill sergeants used. And, I just have to suck it up and drive on, private. That's what my first sergeant told me.
So when the supply clerk was posted to Fort Irwin, California, he did just that, sucked it up, drove on. But soldiers coming home from Iraq told stories of the horrors of war.
They were showing me their boots that were soaked in blood that they couldn't use anymore, their uniforms that were soaked in blood that they couldn't use anymore. They got back and they just have them as mementos from Iraq. And it was, I couldn't believe what I was hearing.
In late 2004 came word his unit was shipping out, heading for Iraq. The supply clerk was about to be reassigned.
I was going to be a 50 cal gunner on the back of a Humvee while I was in Iraq. I wasn't trained to fire a 50 caliber machine gun. I'd never fired one before. First time I was going to get to fire one would be when I got to Iraq.
On January 13th, 2005, they made the decision.
I was supposed to report to my unit at 8 a.m. for deployment, and 3 a.m. me and my wife drove off base.
The Army issued a warrant for his arrest. The high school dropout was on the run.
I decided that I didn't want to participate in what I believed to be an illegal war. I have no problem serving my country. I love the United States. That's where I grew up. That's my home. That's where my family is.
He stayed out of sight, hiding and traveling.
It was terrifying. I didn't know when I'd be pulled over for my taillight being out, or, when anything could happen, right? When I was just going to be arrested for probably something stupid.
Johnson thought that crossing the border would be his last step to freedom. After 5 months of being AWOL in the United States, he made his decision. So with his wife beside him, a bag of clothes in the back of the car, he drove to the Canadian border.
And I was absolutely terrified. I was terrified that they were going to run my identification because I have a warrant for my arrest in the United States.
But they didn't check his ID. So he headed to Toronto and a war resistors support group. He found a sympathetic lawyer, then came to Nelson, claiming he was a refugee.
Basically, we don't think that we should have to go to prison for not wanting to fight in the war in Iraq. So we're saying that any prison sentence that we get would be unjust. So that's our basis for our refugee claim.
He's not a refugee from anything except for what he signed up for and said he would do.
Elizabeth Knutson from Spokane knows exactly what Ryan signed up for. They both did their basic training at Fort Jackson within months of each other.
I wanted to serve my country and get some money for college and give me some time to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, and so that's why I joined.
At just 17, she had to get parental permission to enlist. 1 day later, she headed for basic training. Knutson did a year in Korea, then headed to Iraq.
We were stationed up in Ramadi, and I was a mechanic there on construction equipment.
In one of the most dangerous parts of Iraq, Al Anbar province west of Baghdad.
We had a couple times they tried to breach the gate, and we had good security out there that, they stopped that. But, the city itself was not a safe place to go. There's people constantly dying there.
You can imagine how she feels about Ryan Johnson.
As long as he stays up in Canada, we can't touch him. If he ever comes back down here, I hope they catch him and they throw him in Leavenworth for the rest of his life.
Sitting in Nelson, B.C., Private Ryan Johnson believes he did the right thing. There are some who are watching this who would call you a coward.
I don't see myself as a coward. I'm sure there's many people that do. I am here. I've been here for 2 years fighting to have status. I've been here for 2 years struggling without being able to see my family.
I know guys that have gone over there and they've lost their lives. They've given everything to this country and what they believed in, and this guy just turned and ran.
I believe that I made a moral decision, and I don't think that I should have to go to jail, nor anyone else, for making a decision that they believe is the right one.
You come back from deployment and you see this mom there, this wife, this soldier that you knew, great guy, and he died over there, and she's holding a brand new baby girl, and he never got to see her, and this guy just turns and runs from his duty.
Why did he decide to talk?
Because he believes his point is valid. He believes that he is a war resistor, that he has a logical argument that'll play in the courts. He's lost his first court appeal. It now moves up to the federal courts in Canada, and that could take 6 years.